Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Oh, folks and friends and friends and folks, listeners and viewers and everybody alike. Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. And I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're happy to have you back for another episode. It's just, we're going old school OG movie show with just, let's see, this guy and that guy. I was
never
pointing
can
at our
trust.
names.
I always think that we're on the opposite sides when we get posted, but I see myself pointing in older episodes, and I seem to be wrong 100% of the time.
You know what? Here's the thing: is for the video feed, which I control because I edit that. There's been times where I've been completely wrong too, and I've just left it because I'm like, yeah, no, that makes.
Oh no,
sense.
I'm fine with the evidence of our like not knowing what's going on being in the show. If we started cutting that out, we'd be left with precious little left, I think.
Oh, all right. So today we are going to, it's not a deep dive. No, we're not doing a deep dive, but we are going to just kind of talk a little bit about the early, the first movies in what is now known as the DC extended universe. DC
I don't know what the E stands for.
What does the DCE stand for? The DCEU. We're going to be talking comic book movies.
I always thought it meant Detective Comics Europe.
Detective Comics
European Union edition.
Yeah, that would be good. And and we talk about the movies, but we convert everything to euros.
I was like, that's weird that they differentiate when they play them over in Europe as when they play them here.
Oh boy. So we are going to be talking about
we're not going too far back in time, obviously.
No.
DC movies started back in 1978 when we were 6 years old or whatever. I was 6.
When I would have been like 5 or 4. I think
yeah,
like
so
2 years younger than me.
Yeah, so we're just going back to when I lived in my old apartment. That's not too far back.
No, we're
That's
sort of in this
ancient history,
sort of this modern era of and movies that the DC comics and everything sort of they all work together. They are part of the same cinematic universe.
Such as it is. The U definitely stands for universe. We're pretty sure about that.
Yep. And so we're gonna learn we're gonna talk a little bit about these movies. First though, a real quick happy birthday to my amazing wife. And she is terrific, and she puts up with Ryan and I doing this pretty much
for
every
all
week.
This time for 30 years ish.
Yep. And then of course want to thank Charlie de Lauzarica again for such just a terrific show last week.
Yeah, if you haven't seen last week's show, what are you doing?
He was
comic book nerds. What are you doing watching this show and skipping that one?
Yeah,
go back. It's one of the best ever, and it's obviously because we had a guest of some serious experience and substance come on the thing, and was very gracious with his time and his answers to all my questions, and as thrilling to have him on. So
yeah, he was super great. He was game for all the dumb fun stuff that we wanted to talk to him about, and I think and it was really great. He was I think he was. Especially, I keep thinking back the sort of the countenance of his face when you started asking about the duelists and
Oh
the
yeah,
dueling directors.
was he happy about that? I couldn't tell.
I think he was very happy about that. Because he was just like, no one has ever asked me about that, and I think he was delighted.
It's neat stuff. So go back and check it out. We also, we didn't talk about losing Ed Asner, who's a fantastic character actor. Obviously, his history kind of speaks for itself. Honestly, Michael K. Williams just a few days ago. That's heartbreaking. He was our age, and that just doesn't feel like he should be gone at all.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. We won't get into this too much in this show, but he's a really interesting guy. You should check out. Now's the time because it's all out there. Check out some of the biographical information about him, about his I don't want to say mental illness, but his struggles with different personality traits that he has. He was extremely guilt-ridden over the way, and really conflicted over the way gang culture and stuff sort of worshipped his Wire character, which is it's an iconic star-making performance by him, and the character is fantastic, but he was never at peace with it because of those sorts of real world concerns. So he's a real man, a conscience, a guy who, because of that, brought real depth to his performances.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna miss him a lot. He really was fantastic.
Yeah. Again, and it is a sad tale, and he's just a tremendous tremendous performer, and a guy who
he just kept laying it out there and making everything personal. And I mean, it's really great work, really great body of work he left behind, for sure. So that's all we can ultimately judge these guys for. But like I say, his story, everybody's got their own story, and we got to remember that. But his is really unique. His outlook on the world and the way he was affected by his work, and the way that in turn affected his work, like that, whatever that cycle is fascinating to me to read about. So I liked him a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, let's
not to start on a downer, but I thought now the weeks will go by, and we'll get to give at least a little tribute to these couple of guys.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, thank you for posting something about it on our Facebook page.
I missed Ed altogether. Sorry about that. We were, we were in the middle of a bunch of stuff when that happened, but obviously it's a little easier. I'm at peace with Ed Asner passing because he's an old man.
Well, yeah,
we got to watch him become a crusty old man at the movies. You know what I mean? Like that. We got to go through that whole career deal with that guy. And I feel like he was really self-actualized and like he was both proud of his legacy, and he was both restless with the world at large in equal ways. And I feel like that's a dude who lived the dream. And I feel like Michael was he really could have just been getting started for all we know. And so that's, not to put value on things, or it isn't like that. It's just, it sucks when people are taken from us young for different reasons. That's admittedly true. We're going through an era right now, I said, where the older people at the start of the baby boomer generation, and certainly the people older than that, I mean, we're losing some of them every week, really. There's a ton of them, and their influence on our generation in terms of entertainment and pop culture can't be quantified. So I also, as people who bring these sort of messages and stuff to an audience, we try and keep our perspective about that too, and try and have substantive things to say about it rather than just weepy, because I didn't know.
I liked him. He was so great. Yeah, no,
I don't connect with it really on that level. Some people, I think especially in music, maybe more than movies, because I think movies sort of do all the work for us, which is great. I mean, that's what's great about them. I think music, you're an interactive part of, to somewhat, you sort of make it your own, and that makes it a sort of different thing. But that's a whole nother really deep discussion that we don't really need to get in now. But these guys were great storytellers, no doubt. So at least in our little way, there's our shout out to them, and thank you to them for what they put on the line for us emotionally to entertain us and distract us, you know. So Green Lantern.
Yeah, let's go. So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start with so here we go. We're going to get into, we're going to have a fun discussion about, I just found this one. I'm going to do a fun discussion about the DCEU. There, just an explosion.
Yeah, but it faded out too fast. Otherwise,
it really did. It was not a good one. It was not a good one. I might edit that one out.
Nah, leave it in. You got to have something. You know, I should have emailed you Synth Blast. That isn't really nice.
I think I have that somewhere.
Wow.
It's
a good stand-in when you need a.
Here we go. DCEU.
It's not as cool as an explosion, but at least it's a fully formed thing.
That is true.
Whoever recorded that sound cue and uploaded it, really, you need to let it go.
Yeah, that explosion was bad.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so let's start with Green Lantern. The Green Lantern, it was 2011. It's the movie that where Ryan Reynolds was securing his place as an A-list. He was going to become an action movie superhero. 2011, directed by
Martin Campbell.
Yeah, directed by Martin Campbell.
To date, I think it's the last thing directed by Martin Campbell. Martin was hired to direct that film because he had very successfully relaunched James Bond with GoldenEye and Casino Royale. Really, he relaunched James Bond twice in wildly successful and popular films. He created a sort of origin story and a modernizing, or at least helped to. It was sort of a committee approach, but he directed Mask of Zorro and Legend of Zorro. Mask of Zorro in particular is still a really fun Zorro film.
Super fun. Yep.
And really does, again, it's kind of what GoldenEye did. It took what the modern movie blockbuster was. It made sure it checked off all those boxes, but it also, got to the core essence of what the thing itself is. And that was the idea here with Green Lantern too. This was an attempt. This has been decanonized, I believe, if that kind of thing's important to you. But near the end of the Christian Bale Batman films run, this was definitely an attempt to launch the idea of an extended universe, to bring he's not really a side player in DC Comics. Green Lantern's a pretty big deal, but he's not a mainstream cereal box superhero either. He's got, his powers are weird and tough to, they can actually be explained pretty easily. The movie does a pretty good job of explaining them, but they're just not, he can, they're not this little finger list of things he can do. Through the power of this interstellar lantern that charges this ring he wears, he's able to make things from his imagination materialize for as long as he's able to focus on them. And they are limited only by two things: the scope of his imagination and the fearlessness with which he inhabits his present. And that's the movie does a pretty good job of showing how fearless. There have been several Green Lanterns through the years. This is sort of the most famous, the most iconic. Hal Jordan, the scientist / test pilot who was deemed worthy by a dying lantern who crashes on his planet. It's really not even that guy who chooses him. It's the ring. It's the lantern that chooses him and decides.
Yeah.
Humans aren't considered in the universe to be sophisticated enough, to be without fear enough, to be an old enough, wise enough species to even have ever been considered to be part of the greater Lantern interstellar police force. but desperate times call for desperate measures. And when this power source comes out from this guy, it finds Hal Jordan and bestows those powers upon him. And that's our way into really storylines. They're space opera-y, but they're really as big as you can imagine. They're as big as the universe. The powers really do come from the imagination. So I've always loved Green Lantern because of that, because it's whatever you can dream up. It's not, it doesn't, it doesn't stay for long. It doesn't, but if you can think of a way to solve your problems, you can materialize it in front of you and save the day. And of course he does countless times in those comics.
Yeah.
And Campbell was a good choice for this. He's not a good fit for Hollywood culture because he's known to be very temperamental. He's known to be a taskmaster on set. He's known to be really vulgar and loud and shouty, but he's, kind of full of energy. And he does have this platoon of people that keep coming back and starring in multiple movies of his. Our own J.O. Sanders, Green Lantern was his second film with Martin Campbell. And Jay actually comes of the older distinguished actors involved in Green Lantern. Jay comes off pretty good. Tim Robbins and Angela Bassett, not so much, but Jay does a good job. He's if you ever seen our interview with Jay, you'll see that he has this in him. He knows when he's on screen, and he makes all the nonverbal moments. He creates a character in those moments. He does the work of reading his lines and doing what he's supposed to do and being what he's supposed to be in the scenes in which he talks a lot. But the performances in these other moments and these reaction shots, it's in the big Lantern's big coming out party. He's got a big emotional moment in it, and it does a really, really good job. And I think that the Robbins is more traditional sort of villain, so I don't know what he could do, but Angela Bassett and she's a good actor. She's really stilted and doesn't know what she's doing in a movie like this. And it's not that the part is great, but there's just not much there to do with it. The biggest, so look, everything's here. You get to go to these other planets. You've got a really interesting bad guy who feeds off of the fear of people. So it's very thematically useful. This otherworldly entity, Parallax, who comes to Earth to suck all our energy so that it can be strong enough to take on the Lantern's world, universe wide. And they're shown as being, men of action or women of action or fish or bears of action or whichever sort of aliens you have at the time. But they're also shown as being this sort of old bureaucratic organization who's not really ready to jump into a crisis. They mulling it over and stuff, but the film has everything. There's an obvious concerted effort to put everything you would want from a Green Lantern movie in it. It's all there, and it's all really well realized visually, and the action scenes are in an old school way, choreographed really beautifully. And so what's the problem with it? Well, the biggest problem with it is that Hal Jordan, one of the more level-headed and sort of righteous guys in DC Comics, is an absolute douche nozzle in this film. Just ridiculously selfish, sort of complete dickhead of a person. He actually it takes him 30 minutes into the movie before he does or says anything that's not super douchey. And he doesn't string an entire scene of that together until an hour and a half into the movie. And then, to Ryan Reynolds' credit, I guess, part of the reason he's in this movie is because the character was written this way, or was it written this way because he was attached to the movie?
And that's at this point,
I'd like to know the answer to that.
He was very much, and that, that was his bread and butter, is that sort of snarky, thing. And so he,
So I don't know the answer to that, and I don't want to put too much blame at his door, because, as I say, when those two scenes come where he's not acting like a total dork, he's quite good, and he does a really good job of selling the third act, the big finale of the film, physically, So, you know, Ryan has it in him to not be that. But when he's playing that kind of character, he has this sort of Jim Carrey voice that he adopts. And it just, any idea of a person, of even a conventionally heroic character in a movie just goes out the window. I suspect too many cooks in the kitchen from a script standpoint, but this character is nothing like the character in the comics. It's been completely re-engineered to play to his comic strengths, of which I've never been even slightly impressed with, and still am not to this day. I think Ryan, when he wants to step up to the plate, or when he's given material that allows him to do it, he pretty much does it. And even this film, and like I say, in the end, he's pretty good in it, but he's terrible in it up until that point, and it's terrible, not because of him, but because of the take on the character. And he doesn't help with that at all. How could he? It's clearly what he was brought in to do, to be this guy. Just, I mean, he's just a terrible person. The film doesn't need him to be that. The guy can have a sense of humor, you know. Reynolds' natural comic timing and stuff can all work, and he can still be a halfway decent guy who has his own struggles with things. The film just doesn't deliver on that at all. It doesn't deliver a nuanced character at all. Likewise, Blake Lively, who I compared to Ryan, who I adore as an actor, who I think is great in almost everything. I've never seen her TV show. I know that's what she's most famous for, but
oh yeah, I've
never watched that. But yeah, but I've watched. You know, I've seen she's in The Town. She's amazing in that. She's in, you know, she's kind of Carrie's age Adeline, which she's really, really good in that film too. And there's this whole list of movies where she just is good every time. This character, though, it doesn't allow for that. She's a damsel in distress when she needs to be. When she needs to be a badass fighter pilot, she's that. When she needs to be a stick up her butt, sort of corporate lecture machine, she's that. When she needs to be a wilting violet who just thinks her hell is so cute, she's that. There's no character consistency here for Blake to latch onto. So she just sort of shows up and looks good and tries to do each scene for what's there. But there's no consistency to that character at all. It's shameful. It's really poorly done. And again, the film has that as 4 or 5 credited screenwriters, if you don't count the people who actually created Green Lantern. That might be too much, too many permutations. But it's a shame because there's a lot to like there. That film is universally dismissed, and I think that's not right either. There's some really inventive action scenes. The Mark Strong is great in it. The Sinestro, if anyone knows anything about comics, they know that that's going somewhere, and he's a good actor to be out on. Oh, Peter Sarsgaard is off the hook fun.
Yeah, he's
so good every time bonkers, he's on screen.
Yeah. He's bonkers. It's so he's such a quirky, unique talent.
He's our generation's so John Malkovich, basically, is how I view it. And when he needs to go over the top, when he needs to go way over the top like he does in this, it's a blast. It's a fully committed gonzo performance, and those are fun. It's a comic book movie. It just deserves one. Since our main villain is a special effect primarily, it's great to have a guy with some old school makeup on, just vamping it up. It's really entertaining. And you know, Tamira Morrison is pretty good at is Fish Lantern, and Michael Clark Duncan, as you'd expect, is terrible as a pig lantern. You know, you're only as good as, but in this, you're kind of only as good as what's on the page. When that stuff is working, this movie's pretty good. And when it isn't, there's no saving it. And it's just too much of it isn't working. And it even gets off to this is not working start that it just kind of never recovers from. So there's a longer version of it. It's sloppy. It's better, but it's one of those sloppy versions where when they cut stuff, they integrated it into the movie, and then putting it back into the movie makes it in the movie twice, kind of thing. It's still slightly better, you know, just a touch over 2 hours. It's not some mega director's cut or anything, but it does make his backstory somewhat better. And I don't know, it's a shame. You know, they all just sort of disown it, and it's the butt of a lot of jokes. That's another thing.
It really
if you're gonna cast Ryan Reynolds in your film and it doesn't turn out good, he's just gonna relentlessly rip on it like it was your fault for decades afterwards, as if he had nothing to do with that movie sucking, because he did. His very involvement in it brought it down a few pegs to start. So, but he looks the part, man. He kind of looks like Hal. He looks good in the makeup. It's kind of neat when his eyes change. When he's playing the reality of the danger and stuff, he's pretty good. But I'm not quoting all the things he's bad at, but it's all the rest. It's the first hour and a half. Truly.
Yeah, I think, you know, reading some of the stuff here, this movie was originally intended to be a comedy first. You know, like people like Jack Black were attached to it for a while. Like
the 21 Jump Street of Green Lantern films, basically.
Yeah, it was, you know, and like Justin Timberlake, Bradley Cooper, which, you know, like Bradley Cooper at this point was not the Bradley Cooper we know, you know, from Silver Lining.
He was on his way, but he wasn't there yet.
He was you know, he was still, you know, the guy was in Wet Hot American Summer, for crying out loud. The guy is fun. It was offered to John Hamm, and John Hamm turned it down. Who, you know, while John Hamm is, you know, obviously known for Mad Men, a serious role, in LA, he's well known amongst the comedy, in the comedy circuit, from just hanging out at comedy clubs.
Mad Men's a pretty comedic role, I would actually say. I would argue.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely leans, you know, he finds his places and leans into it. So the fact that it was a comedy first lead, you know, and then the studio said, well, no, we gotta, after people on the internet were like, they're gonna make it a comedy. What, Jack Black? What? I mean, even with Ryan Reynolds, you know, and so they, you know, they're like, this thing, and so I think I think they came from this comedy place, and how it moved back is it moved from comedy to where it is, you know, to where what we ended up getting. So a lot of that, you know, a lot of the you know, the quips and the one-liners and some of that, you know, snarky humor that you know, that Reynolds
it's not just snarky humor though. He's a dick. He's just a huge giant dickhead for an hour and a half.
Yeah,
like it's not really. It shouldn't be a self-serious thing. It should be an easy breezy film, I think.
Well, yeah, and it undercuts the whole.
Why on earth does this alien entity choose this self-involved butthole?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
They're supposed to be, you know, supposed to be resilient and strong of character and strong of heart, and we see none of that, except we're just supposed to believe, oh well, he was a fighter pilot, so he must be.
It's a cool fighter pilot sequence, but even in that sequence, he's just acting like a self-serving jerk. And then when they yell at him about it, he just keeps acting like that. I mean, he doesn't. If you needed him to start at some point so he could evolve into something, you don't even show that. He just eventually things get so heavy that he just sort of flips. But that doesn't, like Joel said, it doesn't even make sense in the context of its own idea. So it's weird how many of the little details the film gets right whilst missing the whole point of the thing. Yeah. And I don't know that audiences cared. They didn't care at all. It had a decent sort of opening, not great, disappointing, but it is one of those movies where despite the hype and the fact that it looked like a big must-see event film, its word of mouth and everything that came weeks later just sent it into the tank. Yeah. So it's considered a failure artistically and monetarily, and it didn't lead to anything. I mean, it just it's its own thing just sitting there now, but I still watch it every once in a while.
Yeah, I've seen it once or twice when it's been on.
It's hard to hate because it sticks the landing, and because there are so many magical things in it, but that character, man, he's such a jerk. It's impossible. It's crazy that they thought they could write him like that and that we would that some movie star magic, especially this particular movie star, would somehow be able to save it. He doesn't. He couldn't possibly.
Yeah, so like as you mentioned, it has sort of been decanonized. It's, you know, they're saying nope, Man of Steel is the first movie in this new thing.
But this was clearly intended to. He's an outskirts character, but it's clearly intended to maybe start making movies about these.
It sets up. I mean, it has a sequel setup. It has that post-credit sequence or mid-credit sequence that says, no, this is just the beginning of this. And yeah, apparently there was a trilogy planned that has been scrapped. Apparently, you know, and I should mention that we're talking about the DCEU movies, and there is this whole other DC universe that takes place in television. The DC properties on television are like gangbusters, and that thing is
we're never going to talk about those.
No, and we're not, but I'm just saying, you know, so but they do play a little bit of part here, because apparently in Arrow,
you really want to know my opinion about like the first season of Supergirl, I can tell you that, but the rest of that crap on the CW,
Arrow, apparently there was an Arrowverse. Now the Arrowverse has the, you know, the Green Arrow show. Arrowverse did a Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover event with apparently like Supergirl and all these other shows, and it establishes that this film of Green Lantern takes place on World of Earth 12.
Nice.
So they're able to shift it into a multiverse, saying, yeah, this was the thing, because they, you know, it is being, they are going to try to reboot it. And it you know, it was possibly supposed to be, well, apparently if there was some idea that it was going to appear in the Green Lantern was going to appear, or at least make a cameo in Justice League. That would have been
an okay way of reintroducing him.
Yeah. You know,
anyway, the problem with the film is all this minutia aside, the problem with the movie is that it establishes Green Lantern in the important ways it has to, about as well as it can. So you can't just make that whole movie again, because you did it. Those parts you did right. And you need to establish a different character, but somehow with the same setup, it's a challenge. So you really do need to, I think, do a little bit of what they, well, I said I wasn't going to do that. So you need to sort of reboot it softly, rather than, you know, allowing this movie to exist in some ways, because there's a lot of useful information in it. And then maybe you can have another Green Lantern movie, but I don't see it. I just don't see it.
They're, you know, there are other people that have, you know, Hal Jordan is not the only Green Lantern that has ever protected Earth.
True.
In this, so there are, I think there's one of the Green Lanterns, one of the men to hold the title of Green Lantern was a guy named Jon Stewart. And I think it would be pretty hilarious if they actually just got Jon Stewart, the comedian, to play that role.
Yeah, that would fix everything.
That would fix everything. I think that would be the perfect movie. No, but no, there are, and obviously they could create a Green Lantern thing that has nothing to do with, frankly, any of these humans. They could just, you know, because there have been many non-humans that have also, if they wanted to save,
there's thousands of them, in fact.
Yeah. If they wanted to save a Green Lantern thing,
but I don't think that would be easily. I don't think that would be easily done either. I think all these ideas are dumb. You should move on to the next movie.
All right. So next movie,
on all that.
Well, you know, Green Lantern is an interesting.
I love Green Lantern. I stated why at the beginning, but this whole Green Arrow says it's this. I don't care what Green Arrow says. I mean, I get that's part of the superhero sort of ethic. So, you know, some of that's important, but it's like, what, a CW show thinks something? I mean, seriously, keep that to yourself. Internet.
So
don't come to me with your CW flash stories or whatever. That's we include television on this, but we have a threshold for decent television. And
Yep.
there ain't nothing on the CW that qualifies. I've said that before, and I stand by that. Those shows suck. They're just a colossal waste of your time.
A couple of years later, in 2013, the DC extended universe officially gets going with Man of Steel. Yeah. And of course, everybody knows the Man of Steel by a different name. Superman.
Kal-El.
Yeah, Kal-El. No, yeah. So we have our Superman now. That Superman. Obviously, we had the great Superman. Christopher Reeve in the with that 70s and 80s. Then we had we tried to reboot it. Who's the guy who was in before Henry Cavill? What was that guy's name?
I don't know. Nicolas Cage got paid for making a Superman movie that they never made.
Yep.
So I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I know. Let's see. Give me
Dean Cain?
No. The
there are these Superman movies in between Quest for Peace and Man of Steel that I'm aware of. None. Zero.
Superman Returns. That's what the
Brandon Routh.
Yeah, Brandon Routh. Yeah.
Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. That's part of that same. Technically, that's a continuation of that sort of.
Yeah.
Poor Brandon. Dude, I'm sorry, everyone involved in that movie that I just completely forgot about you.
So this is our reboot of the Superman story. And we get
that film was meant, the Superman Returns was meant to be a continuation of Superman beyond Superman 2, but with everything sort of changed slightly. I think it's good and fair of them in a cinematic speak way to ignore what was difficult for them to continue on from and just to do their own thing, and yet try and keep the spirit of something that had gone before that everybody loved going. But that film was a big hit, but it had all these costs from these other failed Superman movies. That Nicolas Cage, Tim Burton's Superman movie cost Warner Brothers $60 some million, and that was part of Superman Returns' budget. That's where they announced to their shareholders where that money was, which wasn't really fair to it. And that has a lot of cool things in it again, but it didn't really spark America's imagination the way the Christopher Nolan Batman movies did, and it was intended to live alongside those. So strangely enough, later down the line, they're going to reboot Superman. Not that much later down the line either, but later down the line. And they got Goyer, who co-wrote the Batman movies, and they got
David Goyer.
Yeah, they got Christopher Nolan and his wife, who directed and produced them, to sort of Godfather Man of Steel. They didn't so much create it as they oversaw certain aspects of the way you should do a movie like that these days. The big hire, of course, was Warner Brothers' favorite son, at least at the time, the director of Watchmen and 300 and a host of other things, Zack Snyder. And Zack was going to bring something totally different to the picture, and he did. He brought a totally different idea of Krypton than we've ever seen before. He brought a very different, much more in line with our modern reality and modern values, Kansas upbringing for Clark Kent, parents with very sort of post 9/11 real world fears about how somebody like this would be seen in society. All that stuff plays fantastically. His two sets of parents, Diane Lane, Kevin Costner, and Russell Crowe and Eilert Zier, are fantastic. It really is a tale of two origins of this character and how Superman is a balancing act between those things, between those philosophies. And it's really exciting that that's done in a way that, for really the first time on screen, is not in a non-biblical sort of way, which that I think no offense to Bryan Singer or Richard Donner, Tom Mankiewicz, or all the people who made Superman before, they sort of are like, hey, if we're going to do this, here it is. You kind of can't deny the Jesus metaphor going on with the Superman character. I think everybody who worked on Man of Steel found a way to not eschew those ideas, but just found a way to just address them as immediate things that are part of the movie and not lofty metaphorical things that you just, that we just can't deny. It's wonderful that way. And that feels like Christopher Nolan's influence to some degree, but it's also Snyder's sort of visual self-assuredness. Those scenes, that first half of the film where Superman's finding his way, where Lois Lane is investigating him and sort of discovering him, it's cut in this very cool way where we get him as a young adult going through these series of misadventures while remembering his past. That film is spectacular up until the moment where it introduces Michael Shannon's Zod character. Zod is Kryptonian mutiny sort of guy who betrayed his own planet right when it was during its downfall and was punished for it. Shannon's pretty decent in the role, but the role's a little weird. And the film seems to go into, it's not a bad movie from there to the end, but it goes into this other gear where it's this huge, massive, larger than life, two gods duking it out on Earth.
Yeah.
With all of us little peon human beings, like just scurrying around underneath them, trying to not have a building fall on them. And it loses that human connection. That's an important part of Superman. The character himself has some great moments at the end, but the big criticism of that film was, my God, I mean, you just can't completely destroy an entire city as a backdrop to a mano final fight and not have us at least consider the carnage involved in something like that. The film doesn't seem to want us to do that. The film wants us to care about the one family that Superman actually, and obviously major spoiler alerts for all these films, but Superman actually kills Zod, breaks his neck in order to save this sort of cowering traveling family who picked the wrong day to come to Metropolis. And that works because that's a big moment. It's a big moment for Superman emotionally. It's over the top like a lot of Snyder's big finales, but it's great. But that just, Joel, we've got the Daily Planet staff running around and stuff, but there's way too many. Like you can tip one building over, right? You can't, not 60. It's just too huge, too much. And I'm just sitting there going, geez, all these people are just dying because this dude threw a punch a certain way. Like, it doesn't feel right when you're watching it. And I didn't like that about it. And that sort of left me feeling cold about a movie that I thought was otherwise. I mean, it certainly relaunches Superman. Cavill is fantastic. Amy Adams is great. Lawrence Fishburne's great. Just tick, 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 tick. You tick the boxes and everything here. Like, you want more of this for sure. But the film
Michael Shannon is really great as he gets to be,
my favorite's what's his face, Law and Order SVU in it. He gives a fantastic performance in the film as this sort of government agent who just doesn't care that he's fighting aliens or he just goes on about the fight. I can't remember that actor's name, but you guys all know him,
Yes, it is Christopher Maloney.
Yeah, Chris. Yeah, I mean, that's me picking a sort of side character. I think where the real soul of the thing is with the parents. With Crow is fantastic in it, but I think with Costner and Diane Lane in particular, that those Midwest family, that are Costner's so wise and he's so calm and he's just the dad that everybody wishes that they had. He's just kind of perfect, but somewhere in him is this deep and carnal fear for the well-being of his son, and it betrays really ultimately who he could be as a person, who he could be for humanity. And there's a literal tragedy and a figurative tragedy to that character that I just adore. And Costner's is fantastic in that part. And Cavill too, as a young man. It's kind of fun because you go back, watch him as a young man, go back and watch Count of Monte Cristo or any of the films when Cavill was kind of a teenager. And when you see him playing himself as a teenager, he becomes that again. It's really magical. Henry, all respect, obviously, in the world to Brandon Routh and certainly to Christopher Reeve, right? But Henry's the most accomplished actor I can think of to take on this character at this point in his career.
Right.
He had done a ton. He's a known thing. He's not a superstar, but he's this guy who's been acting since he was a kid. He's been in 2 giant TV shows. Like, he's just done tons of stuff. And he shows up with a certain, it's hard to explain because he's a very soulful Superman, but he shows up with there's this confidence in storytelling that he exudes. And the film keeps, puts Costner and puts Adams and puts these other movie star people in front of him. And he doesn't wilt that way at all. But the ending's tough, man. Maybe you feel differently about it.
No, to me, it's one of the signature things I talk about or one of the singular things I point at when I talk about destruction porn.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no thought to what any of this means.
It'd be something if the film seemed like it wanted you to think about that stuff, but I'm with you. It doesn't seem to. It ends with a joke where this cute army girl's like talking to Harry Lennox, her boss, General what's his face, and she's like, "Oh, I just can't help it. He's so cute." Like, it ends on this sort of happy, more Adventures of Superman, but it's like, dude, what you just showed us is the apocalypse. It's really difficult to change gears and to walk with a pep in our step out the door when we've seen an entire city of people just obliterated.
I mean, because the way that whole sequence is shot, I mean, we could have seen either, well, Superman wouldn't have done it, but Zod could have picked up an entire building full of people and swung it like a bat. And the reaction the movie would have wanted us to have was cool.
I'm not sure it goes that far, but it definitely doesn't want us considering the consequences of all the carnage. It's a big, bloodless, massive destruction. Destruction porn is a fair word. It's still very self-serious, though. It doesn't feel like Pacific Rim or anything where it really is all just a big joke. But that beside the point. A joke, not joke. I mean, even if it's not a joke, it's still was too much for me. So
yeah, it's just and to just not to have it. So I know I agree with so much of what you're saying. It's that the first 2/3 of the movie they're really great. They're
even Zod's appearance with the Outer Limits TV, taking over your TVs, like that's so cool and weird.
And he's
and Lois as a really active part of the plot, and eventually she's in over her head from what she can do, but her investigation really drives the movie at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about it too. I think
Henry Cavill's so he has such a quiet just a quiet demeanor to him. Everything is so I mean, he
figures out who he is in this great montage sequence. Lois, she figures out, she follows all the strange stories back to their origin point, and he realizes she's doing this, and he comes to her and tells her, you put everybody in danger if you tell people who I am or whatever. And she kind of, that lands with her, and she doesn't. She wants the world to know the story of this thing, but she protects his identity. And later in the film, they're standing there, and she says, you know, he says, well, you know, you were good to your word. And she goes, yeah, well, it didn't mean a lot in the end, did it? And he says, it meant a lot to me. I'm not acting it because I wouldn't dare, but Cavill, the way he says that line, it meant a lot to me. It's the simplest thing, and yet it is full of meaning. Yeah. And that take on the character, we want to see more of that. Even regardless of how the film gives us the willies at the end, I still feel like, yes, more of this. This is great. Good job.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we want from our superheroes is somebody, you know, is when our superheroes realize the weight of of what their existence means. When they can internalize that, you know, not that we want like everything to be an existential crisis, but it's one of the reasons why that doesn't, you know, why the ending is so over the top and doesn't work, is because we have seen Superman understand what his very existence means throughout this whole thing. And then I mean, yes, he's got to fight Zod, but absolute destruction. And don't get us wrong,
the Kryptons, the surviving Kryptons have brought a world builder with them. They're going to destroy all life on Earth. That's what's at stake in this final fight. So in scale, it's kind of, I'm sure from a storytelling standpoint, they saw it as acceptable, but it's still hard to take. It's hard to take.
Yep. All right. So then after Man of Steel, we get, let's see. So that's 3 years, I believe, after Man of Steel. We get Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice. But this is not our Christopher Nolan Batman. This is not our
at the same time,
Christian Bale.
It uses the existence of that to because it isn't that, but it still has that in its back pocket to some degree. It's got this whole, we just went through this whole Batman cycle of films, so you're able to take an older Batman, Ben Affleck in his 40s, and plop him down in the first scenes of this movie, and somebody calls him Mr. Wayne, and we immediately know who he is, and we're off to the races with him. And of course this is a really good movie, and it's good really in both forms, but it's particularly good in its longer version. It's almost a 3-hour movie in its director's cut. But what its masterstroke truly is taking that thing Joel and I were just bitching about, and taking a character that we already love, Batman, and having him experience that destruction of Metropolis on the ground and have the same reaction that we had when we were watching it. So this thing that we most hated about Man of Steel now suddenly becomes a building point for a conflict that we can truly believe in between Batman and Superman, because building that, putting those two guys at odds really for the whole movie in a very real way, it's a tough thing to pull off on screen in a photo real way. It's not that tough to pull off in the comics, honestly. It's difficult to make us believe it on screen. And the building blocks of it start with him, you know, getting in that SUV, driving into town when everything is crumbling around him, running into the smoke as it's barreling down the street from one of those collapsed buildings. One of the buildings that goes down in this fight is Wayne Enterprises Metropolis division, which is full of his friends and stuff and people that he knows. And he sees it the way I said it. These two aliens, these two things that are and the carnage that they're creating just as they're having these common fisticuffs, you know, for a non-mutant, non-superpowered superhero to see that, his reaction to it is extreme. It causes him nightmares. It causes him to be obsessed with ridding the world of this foreign element, and you get it. And it's hard to make you get that, because we know Superman from that previous film, and the world doesn't need to be rid of him. He's good. He's good as gold. He's as American as apple pie. No, we want him. Wayne doesn't see it. He wants him gone. And the whole plot is very, admittedly, really labyrinthian and complicated, multifaceted, triangulated by Lex Luthor, as it turns out, played by Jesse Eisenberg. I love Jesse Eisenberg, but I know y'all hate him. You can all screw off. I don't care. He's great. I think he's always interesting and fun to watch. And I think in this film, the role of the young, hot billionaire, like, to me, it just is perfect. It's perfect casting. And the fact that he has his own generational things hanging over his head, and the fact that it's one of the first times, at least in modern films, where, and forgive me if Smallville does this or some other shows do this, I've not seen those, but it's the first time we see a Lex Luthor who money isn't the issue, and getting more money really wouldn't be helpful. He has all the money. He's like a modern billionaire, as we see them. What he wants and what he's obsessed with is power and legacy. And that makes him much, much more dangerous. Rather than just thoughtlessly killing people in a land grab, he is causing these two titans to duke it out. And whoever loses, he still wins. His plan is set up for that rather perfectly. And of course, he's so obsessed with this stuff that by the end of the film, he's lost his mind and he's literally worshiping a foreign power from afar. We see this. I just love Lex in this film, and I like the new modern take on him. And I find what really drives Batman is that opening sequence, that thing that it feels like the fans, for once, and the fans of conscience, which is a specific part of the group, a subgroup, were listened to in that first film. And this film pays off all of our concerns with that one. That said, it's unnecessarily complicated in a lot of ways. You've got lots and lots of side characters. You have this big Clark Kent investigation into the Batman. Most of that stuff got whittled down to just its bare essence in the theatrical cut, and the people came out of the woodwork. I don't know who these people are. They're a different set of fans than the ones I was just talking about. They're plot hole fans, where they just are like, they're just making their lists of things that don't make any sense. And of course, even at the time, and I hadn't seen a longer version yet, but even at the time I was like, no, that makes sense. I mean, they explained that paid off. That person did this eventually. Do you not remember that part? I mean, all of their complaints were kind of like, what are you talking about? But that sort of became the story of that film. And I really don't think it's the plot itself that was the problem. I really think there's a certain point where when you make something shorter at the cost of its essence, you make it feel longer and more ponderous. And that's really what the theatrical cut of Batman versus Superman is. Because Lois is back. She's great. Jeremy Irons, a very low key, but I think kind of welcome in a more somber movie. Alfred. Yeah. We don't meet really any of the side characters in Gotham or anything. I don't like that Gotham's like just right across the harbor from Metropolis so much. Right. They're supposed to be roughly across Chesapeake Bay, and that's not. You can't go to your roof and see that. That's a long ways away still, even though they're kind of our neighbors. They're the Eastern Seaboard, Yeah. So that annoys me, but I don't know. And I have to say the arrival, and this is again a big spoiler, but and the peppering of Wonder Woman throughout the film is great. Every time she's around, it's fantastic. And every time, and this is where the film really gets hurt by the extra cut. I really don't think it's the plot. I don't think it's Scoot McGarney's character or that African woman or that, because that stuff all got whittled down to nothing. But I don't think it's that stuff that we miss. What we really miss is that Superman's still there, Batman's still there, Bruce Wayne's still there, but Clark Kent has been edited out of the film essentially.
Yeah.
And Clark Kent's an important part of that story. And when you lose a lot of what he was doing, the balance is off. That said, Clark and Bruce meet up at one of Luther's like charity benefits or whatever. It's a fantastic scene. It's really, really fun. Lots of sneaking around, lots of stupid double entendres, but lots of humor and stuff in a movie that's about terrorism and about all this heavy stuff. It's needed, and I like that too. So I really like the film. I think again the third act sort of boom, it just sort of goes off the rails in the third act. The third act has everybody's favorite scene in it, which is Batman's rescuing of Martha Kent. Everyone loves that scene. I don't know a person alive who doesn't think that's the awesomest scene ever, where Batman just eviscerates a bunch of bad guys. And there was some complaining after that too from our group. Batman shouldn't be killing all those people. Clearly he killed a bunch of people in this scene. There's no question. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you know, Michael Keaton Batman started a bunch of circus people on fire and stuff. It's like, does he not kill people? That feels like a more
well, that was we just came off
development of that character.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was all just because of the sort of people. I mean, lay people who aren't in the comics, people like frankly like me and stuff.
And me, I'm not. I mean, I've read some comics, but I'm not a big comic guy.
I've read a few. I've read the Dark Knight series
here.
Yeah, I've read the Dark Knight series, and some of the other big time labels and stuff.
Right.
But the Christopher Nolan Batman series, that's the outlier. That's that's a different thing than the what we have had for years.
These guys are like throwing bombs at them and shooting machine guns at them. I mean, what are you gonna do? It's what are you gonna do, really?
And
what the end also has though is, and Snyder, he's guilty of this all the time, and he's guilty again here. He's got this whole nother super villain and this whole nother thing. And the film actually sets up its creation and stuff. But I think, I don't remember if it was you that said this, but I think this would have been better as an after credit scene than the finale of the film, which is the arrival of Doomsday. Doomsday is the creature, the alien, something hybrid. In the film, they create it from Zod's DNA mixed with all this other stuff, and it's cool the way he comes about and how he evolves kind of right before our eyes into the thing that is from the comics. And Doomsday's claim to fame is Doomsday actually killed Superman. If you remember that issue of Superman where it's the funeral and Wonder Woman and Aquaman are all walking in the parade in front of his hearse or whatever. It's a fantastic cover, the death of Superman. So, fans know that, and they sort of know what's at stake there, but we literally see Batman kill Superman. Spoiler alert again, but he wins this fight, this impossible fight against this all-powerful alien, partly because Superman pulls his punches almost the entire time because he's Superman, but that contributes to it. But Batman's plan works, which is kind of amazing. And then there's the most controversial thing in the whole movie, which I guess we should talk about. Why Batman doesn't, in the end, deal the death blow is because of this shared first name that both their mothers have.
Yeah.
And it sucks because I have to say this is a thing where it's all in the execution. It's not just Snyder's fault, but it's his fault. It's everybody's fault, really. Because whoever came up with this idea has the right idea. This is it. This would be enough to sober him up. The only great moment in it is it's Amy Adams, it's Lois Lane that actually looks at Batman and just lets him she just says this is his mother's name. That's right. It should be coming from her, but it's just sloppily done. Who's he talking to? Why is he calling his mom by her first name? You know what I mean? Affleck gives it his all, but the way it is on the page requires him to really be repetitive and sort of hyper dramatic in a way that ends up feeling silly, because if things are either going to work or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, you're going to look dumb in this scene.
Yeah.
The only one who doesn't come off dumb is Amy Adams. The two guys look terrible in it. So it's frustrating. I was able to get over that in the course of the film because I get what they're going for. And I was kind of like, well, whatever.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's followed up by Batman saving Martha, you know, so to speak. So there's payoff to it too. But that scene is so silly and so self-serious. And it's so everything that these films kind of have become not to be. And it's too bad it became this just incredible, like meme generating, all consuming criticism of the film.
Yep.
And I got to say, it's called Batman versus Superman. It is the moment in the film where that culminates. You do have to nail it. They do not do that.
Right. Right.
But I don't believe that the concept is the problem. I really do believe they just didn't find a way to make it work. And that's important. You had to finesse that moment and test it. It's big and huge. And you got the money, you got all the money in the world. You got to do everything you can to make it work. And right. They obviously didn't do that, or they just thought they'd be okay. I'm not sure what. And what else, Joel?
Well, I mean, to me, you know, one of the absolute highlights of the film is, I mean, yes, we've met Diana Prince, you know, many times throughout it. And then when we finally meet Wonder Woman,
right.
That's
when Doomsday smacks Wonder Woman back and she's sitting there in the rubble and she turns her head back to him and smiles. Yeah. That's the arrival of that iteration of this character. She's fighting something that's worthy of her. You know?
And it's really great.
She's excited by that, the idea of that, you know, we get to see where that comes from, and it's fantastic. So yeah, Wonder Woman showing up, and even the cheesy crap between, is she with you? No, I thought she was with you.
Yeah.
She's not with either of them. She's with them both, but she's not with either of them. That's it. The film's job is to introduce Wonder Woman to us, and and that way, again, that's one of the joys of the thing. I'm glad. I mean, I touched on that, but I'm glad you pointed it out, because everybody wants more Wonder Woman. Everyone wants to hear Junkie XL's little Wonder Woman kicks ass theme again and again and again. Yeah. It never gets old. That character is awesome. That actor is like so perfect for her, and it all works visually. It looks right, feels updated, and you know, I dig it.
Here's what I would say. And again, I mean, this is really going into the weeds, but her introduction and her character being so cool is part of why that ending moment doesn't land.
Yeah,
is because she's not involved in it in any way.
Right.
And you know, and yes, it is. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's Batman versus Superman. But we've just been introduced to this badass, super cool character. Her costume is cool. The theme is cool.
Well, we haven't seen her yet when we're doing Martha. We haven't seen her yet.
Well, sure. Yeah. But
she's boarding a plane and deciding to get off at the last second.
Yeah. But it is part of why.
And to be fair to the movie, structurally, Batman and Superman have to resolve their issues to some degree before she gets involved in this big final fight with Doomsday. It's just Doomsday's a lot to introduce with 20 minutes to go.
20 minutes to
and Wonder Woman is a lot to introduce, even though at least you've trickled that one out to us in a way that we are excited for it. They try something similar with Doomsday, but it doesn't quite work. And frankly, Death of Superman, again, spoiler alert, but that is really, really powerful. That's the scene, and this is, and I always love, and I still in Zack Snyder's corner to a certain degree, because when he nails this stuff, he just really nails it. The scene where you have Superman's funeral in Metropolis and the parade and the masses coming out to see it, and it cuts to Lois lying on Clark Kent's bed after Clark's funeral in small town, like looking up at those glow in the dark stars that we all had on our ceilings when we were kids, and just and dreaming of him. And his mother coming up and seeing her there and understanding it and their connection. It just, it's breaking my heart just talking about it. It feels so real and so amazing in a film that's so full of this slow motion, choreographed, magical, superpower, it's just sort of off the hook, operatic stuff. It's this quiet moment that just shakes you to the core. I adore that about it. But the legend is out about this film. This film did pretty well financially for a film that everyone claims they hated. A lot of people saw it. The critic reviews were pretty good. When you go someplace and see what people rank it, the masses rank it pretty good. This was a film, they rank it, not great, but 7.3 or something, a decent rating for a film with such a bad reputation. This was a film that was truly killed in nerddom. They were not able to get over a couple of things in it and weaponize those things literally in the discourse to crush it and to basically leave a 2-part now extended universe that coheres and makes some sense and has a sort of shared vision.
Yeah.
And they weaponized their opinions about it to kill that and to put the studio, to put the creative people, to put basically everybody involved in this on this scattershot course to their own doom, essentially.
Yeah, they put everything on blast. I mean, it has a record for worst Friday to Sunday drop off of a superhero movie, and then the historic 81.2% decline from week 1 to week 2. And that was all powered by a small group by taking to the internet. How
small it was. It was a lot of people.
It was a lot,
but it was clearly a minority experience amongst people who saw the movie.
A minority experience, and then it was it was a smaller group that kind of started it, and then it just amplified. It was people retweeting, people it was just a constant it was people going, oh, well, I guess I was supposed to think this way about it. I thought I had a good time.
And it wasn't just those people. It was all the clickbait people who ran article and article and article, just unsubstantive, stupid article. People I'm not even sure saw the film, just repeating the same weird plot hole theories and criticisms of the thing over and over and over again until, that was the story. That was the story of it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it didn't do, for having Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman in it, it didn't do very well internationally either.
Right. Again,
this movie didn't tank. It made them well over $1 billion, worldwide, 1.2 billion or something. That was a huge movie for that year, but it was supposed to be the next big thing, and it was considered a disappointment, and that left people not knowing what to do next.
Right. And so, not knowing what to do next is kind of a perfect transition into our next film, which is David Ayer's Suicide Squad.
And that film was made, they were being made concurrently. So they were sort of being made in cooperation with each other, although Suicide Squad was considered definitely a side project. And the highlights were supposed to be wasn't supposed to be really the Suicide Squad at all. It was supposed to be this new introduction to this new Joker and a few Batman cameos that are actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing Affleck's Batman appear amongst these people is like, it seems to fit his sort of darkened outlook and his more cynical nature fit in this universe in a very cool way. We didn't even talk about the Nightmare and the Flash and
we'll get to that a little bit. We'll get to that.
It's overstuffed with stuff too, to be fair. Batman versus Superman, it's not like any of that stuff is bad, but it's overstuffed with stuff. And the nightmare sequences are absurd. They're like nightmares would be. They're not just easy things that you find out are a nightmare that trick you. You can tell they're a nightmare almost from the second that they start. This isn't something that's really happening. I love that about it, but that was also sort of taken wrong. Suicide Squad, let's face it, just a nightmare. Although I have to say, the David Ayer is sort of a perfect match for this material. And I watched this movie yesterday in preparation for the show. That's right. I put myself through it for you, the movie show with Joel and Ryan listener.
Yeah.
And the one thing I don't like about it is that it has these sorts of characters, it has the big bad in it is this big, huge, unstoppable thing. And the film doesn't seem to earn that as a thing that's causing any problems. It's almost like when we meet up with the bad guy, she's sort of just hanging out on a street corner, like making a stew, and then starts fighting with him. Like there's no build up to that character. We're told the origin story of it, but secondhand, and it just doesn't, it seems that part of it seems weird because the little moments between these characters and the extra humor and the R-rated language and stuff, like all that seems to fit pretty well. Like I didn't really mind it. I don't like spending a lot of time with assassins and psychos. And I mean, it's, you know, the film tries to make these guys somewhat sympathetic in ways we can understand, but we don't. I've never found the Harley Quinn character even the least bit sympathetic. I just have never been able to wrap my brain around what she even is and why. I did like, however, what felt real about it was she's this dumb kid with this psycho boyfriend and her whole life sucks because of that. Like that part is like, okay, I could see sort of the machinations of that. Jared Leto's, you know, Joker is, and David Ayer didn't help himself at all. You know, he was all these hype tweets and stuff about all this weird psychotic shit that Leto was doing on the set, which felt made up. He hyped the hell out of his own movie. Then he complained about the way it was cut. Then a longer cut came out and he said that wasn't his cut. And now people are pining away for some missing version of the original Suicide Squad, which you're never going to get because I don't think it exists. There's no better version of this movie out there. The longer version of Suicide Squad's definitely better. It's a character driven movie that way. It is not in the theatrical version. So that's good. But it doesn't make it somehow still good. But it is what it is. I mean, that's the dumbest thing you can say as a critic. That is what it is phrase. Sorry for those of you, that's your pet peeve, but Suicide Squad is what it is. It's this minor side story thing of these other characters and stuff. And it does have some small and fun pleasures in it, you know?
Right.
I don't get off on psycho people one-upping each other by trying to kill each other. I don't get up on sexual double entendres and overly sexualized characters that think that's fun. I don't get off on, you know, people manipulating each other or threatening children or threatening spouses to get what they want. Like there's nothing in this. It's a dark, ugly story. All of Ayer's films are dark, ugly movies about dark, ugly things. It all works on that level. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I don't hate it, but I don't enjoy it. And I didn't enjoy it just from watching it the other day. But people did kind of like it. If I remember them liking it. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I remember there being this, no, that's how you do it.
I just remember everyone just liking Margot Robbie, and that's it. That's all I ever.
Yeah, but she's now done 2 other movies since, and she's not been good in any of them. That character sucks. I'm sorry, maybe I just don't get it. You've got a movie star who doesn't mind going all the way with something, and it just feels cheap and exploitative. There's nothing psychologically interesting or rich about that character. It really is just pin-up bullshit to me. So, yeah, I can see why that's the character they wanted to carry on, because a bunch of old, horny Hollywood executives, of course, let's keep Harley Quinn alive, right? But to what end? The Birds of Prey movies, we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves, but that's not better. That's not an improvement over this version of the character at all. I haven't seen the other one, so I can't say, but what we're left with here is a pretty empty vessel.
Yeah, the new one. I'll save my thoughts on the new one until we talk.
We'll get
about
there.
It, but I did see it. It's I mean, I liked it better than I liked this Suicide Squad, I guess, as well. I'll say at this point. So Suicide Squad, you know, we just had the death of Superman, and Suicide Squad not really filling the void.
No, but a huge late summer hit for Warner Brothers, and it was meant, and it is meant to be part of this chronology. So
it absolutely is part of the universe.
So it should have, if it could have done anything, it should have at least stabilized things a little bit.
Yeah.
And the next movie really should have done that, and it just kind of didn't, I don't think.
So then the next one up here is
anything else to say? I mean, there's not much to say about Suicide Squad.
I don't have a lot to say about Suicide Squad.
The actors in it are pretty good. Joel Kinnaman and Will Smith, and everybody's doing a pretty good job. Even Jay Courtney,
Viola Davis, and no, I'm in the wrong movie here. Woo,
and a sequel, which I haven't seen, but at least if they could have gotten Will Smith, they would have. They at least sort of do respect this film's existence, which is nice, because it's certainly a left turn into a different kind of movie. But these characters, these actors, all this stuff that's set up in this is carried on from, and I appreciate that.
Well, and again, I also, the movie does some, the thing about all these movies is that the Christopher Nolan Batman movies were so had such a devoted fan base, and such they sort of really permeated all of popular culture, so that you have like, oh, the Joker's back, and you're like, well, wait, no, we had the definitive Joker thing. And then they, like you said, with some of the hype tweets were like,
the hype tweets were ridiculous.
This makes Heath Ledger's Joker look like a day in the park. And
he didn't say that, like, but he implied that constantly. And to be fair, Heath Ledger's Joker, this idea of the Joker as some sort of lovable anti-hero, that's a trick you can do once for sure, and they did it pretty brilliantly. But you can't. Next Joker can't be that again. You just can't have that. Yeah. And where they go from here is pretty tough to peg, because that isn't what the character is. It just isn't. Yeah. He's not a lovable anarchist who mostly only kills bad guys. It just isn't that. That's not what the character is. So, but at the same time, boy, did we like that version of that character. And you know what I mean? As an equal sort of, as a menace equal to the Batman character that was established. Whereas this character, you don't believe that Affleck's Batman would have like an ounce of trouble with this guy. So that's the part. It's the part they were claiming they nailed, is the part they didn't get right at all. Like I said, as a psycho boyfriend, I kind of liked him. I thought he was kind of great, because because he is that. He just is a terrible, awful person. He makes her do all this stuff, and rewards her with no, like, any of what she actually wants. That poisonous relationship part of it sang in the film, but that's it. And that's mostly due to Robbie playing the character in this iteration that was somewhat relatable. Yeah. That was a big part of the success of that. So I'm not dissing on her. She's wasted in this role. Maybe she's the only one who could do it appropriately, but I just feel like, guys, if you need, and I don't mean to be so cynical about this, but if you need something to jerk off to, there's lots of stuff out there. Should be, even if the sexuality and the flirting and all that is a big part of the character, which it is, you still there's gotta find something more. And this film ultimately doesn't really do that. And her next film is written by a couple of women and certainly doesn't do that. Yep. So I feel like we'll see with it. I got one more movie coming up. We'll see how they do in that one, but I hope they do something different, because it doesn't do anything for me.
Sure. All right. So the very next year we get the character that was introduced in Dawn of Justice, Batman versus Superman. We get the whole backstory, the whole shebang for Wonder Woman. Wonder
Woman's a great movie.
It really
it's the best movie probably on this list. Maybe not by a lot. Man of Steel's pretty good. I think Batman versus Superman's pretty great for what it is. To be fair, it's like 3 movies crammed into one movie. That's the reward and the punishment all in one thing, really. This film's just really great and old fashioned. Even the origin story is told in real time. There's no jumping around in time. Like, this just really feels like this old school, here, we're doing it. Wonder Woman. Yeah. You know, let's show her as a teenager. Let's show her as an 8-year-old. Let's show her as a 14-year-old. You know, let's show her growing up in this magical land. Let's explain what she is. The side characters in those early scenes, Connie Nielsen and Robin Wright and stuff, it's all really, really great.
Yep.
The younger versions of the character are kind of neat. It moves a little quickly, but you can't spend forever back there.
Right. And
you got to get your star on screen, and you got to do those sorts of things. I understand. I get it. I understand. You know, even though you totally screwed up Greystoke Tarzan, Lord of the Apes by wanting to get to your star earlier. This has that feel to it. Like, it's just been a little quick. Or like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's just like, wow, that's a lot of backstory in like 3 minutes. You know, it's just still good.
Yep.
We like an origin story. At least I do. I know a lot of fans out there claim to be bored with them, but superhero movies, that origin story forces you to deal with the question of what is this person, and, you know, what are they? You have to deal with that on a thematic level. And when you do a sequel that doesn't have that, and you forget to deal with that, you get things like this movie sequel and some other things where you just you can very easily lose sight of the essence when you're just plowing forward to a new adventure, and you get consumed with the MacGuffin of the thing instead of the core of the thing. This film, Gal Gadot returns as Wonder Woman back during 20s, I want to say, or the teens, basically. When during the sort of last days of World War I is when it takes place. Wonder Woman's origin story really is a World War II origin story, like Captain America's and a bunch of others. Them moving it to World War I is fun because we don't deal with World War I very much cinematically, and I dig that, although they don't. They trade in the look and the technology, but we still fighting Nazis basically during World War I. You know what I mean? It's still evil scientists, and it's loaded up with all this World War II iconography, whereas World War I, the Kaiser was hardly the threat to world peace that the later German characters and stuff became. So, but whatever, it's fun. I approve. Even the fast talking like Londoners and stuff, like, it's all World War II, truly. Other than a great trench warfare scene, sort of Wonder Woman's coming out party, which is really iconic. That her first big, she's got a couple little ones, but her first big action scene, crossing no man's land to liberate this town that's been taken over. Every second of it is thrilling and amazing and loaded with the meaning of what the character is. I love that scene, and I love the fish out of water stuff when she chooses to follow Trevor from this isolated, peaceful existence that she's had. She's been raised to be a warrior goddess, nevertheless, but she still lives in for a character that's so powerful and wise and has a real wisdom and righteousness to her. She's very naive and has no idea of the real world, has never seen a man before. Her eating ice cream for the first time, her walking around half naked on the streets of London, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's so great. It's so great, Joel. It's really, really great. And Gal is like the perfect actor for this part. I don't see her going on to winning Oscars and stuff and like playing really much more sophisticated people than this, because I think what's great about her is in her physicality. What's great about her is in this sort of wide-eyed look at everything mixed with this steely determination. Like, this isn't a nuanced character, really. And the film's giving her plenty to work with, but it doesn't want her to be a nuanced character. That's why it works so great. It works on this primal comic book level that I just adore. And Gal, prove me wrong. I mean, prove me wrong. I'll gladly eat my words, but I've seen you in other stuff, and I feel like Wonder Woman, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the role, that's the role of a lifetime. So keep doing those as long as they keep letting you. Don't go off. Don't go off like William Shatner or whatever, and try a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
I still love it though. It's really, really great. Her ideas about what she's doing in the story. She thinks she can find Ares, the god of war, and kill him, and it'll stop World War I and save all these lives. And even that turns out to be a super naive thought. But it's the right idea. It's at the same time, it's the right thing to fight for, right, Joel? It's the thing to fight for. And Wonder Woman's always square on that and focused on that. And she meets up and ultimately falls in love with this sneaky World War II era ahead of his time spy in World War I. And the way he sees things, he's not Diego Luna's character from Rogue One or anything, but the way he sees things is a lot more complicated.
Right.
He's got a greater mission, and he's sort of stepping over corpses to achieve it. And she can't stomach any of that. And that mutual respect between them that still has that push and pull to it, I think is delightful. I think Patty Jenkins' photography is spot on. I think her attention to character is great. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's not much it's just a cheesy comic book movie. That really is all it is, but it's one of the great, great cheesy comic book movies out there. Right. And women and culturally, you just, we've had Wonder Woman on TV, and that character has been with us for a while, but Hollywood hadn't figured out a way to make a movie about her, which is pretty shameful, because when you watch this, it's like, gosh, it's not that hard.
Right.
There it is. Just understand what the essence of that character is and give that to us. Yeah. And they did, and it works. So that's part of what makes, and again, part of what makes, you talked about how Gal Gadot's portrayal of her, in this very, she's very focused. She's very righteous, I guess, she very self-actualized. Chris Pine does such a great job in Steve Trevor to have this bewilderment, this great, yet, he clearly is accomplished at what he is, and he's not only bewildered by her, but is just like thrilled by it. He's like, this is not like women that are any woman that is, and although
his
own secretary is a pretty liberated lady.
Yeah,
to be fair,
but I mean, but again, that plays into it, is that he's able to see her.
That character needs her to come along. If you saw this movie somehow, it isn't. But that's a feather in Chris Pine's cap, in that he kind of repeatedly, kind of like the early Michael Douglas roles, where he just shows up and is totally willing to be second fiddle to a starring lady. It's funny you mention that. It's funny that you mentioned that, because he one of the things Chris Pine says in there is, when he read the script, he read it like going, this is Romancing the Stone, and I'm here for it. Right.
He read it as like, yeah, no, this is great. I love it.
It's a great comparison.
Yeah.
That's a great comparison, because it's a similar character to that. But even more so, I think that the film does right by Steve, in that Steve's at a place where he needs this woman to come along to get him back on the path to righteousness. Truly, he needs to have that. And by the end, it's all crystallized for him. And when it comes time for him to make a big decision, he totally makes the right one. And it's kind of amazing. And I dig it. In that way, the film totally sticks to landing. It doesn't have the big crazy ending these other movies have, and maybe that's a lesson to us.
Whoa, what did I do?
You wanted to know about the man in cell 11.
Oh, sorry, I hit a sounder. I bumped my mouse and it hit the George C. Scott. We were about to get. It is not in the file.
Oh, were we?
Yeah, we were about to get that. Which
Wonder Woman is not.
In the file. Sorry about that, dear listener.
Hey, y'all seen Wonder Woman? I mean, this is why we don't do these superhero shows. One, because I'm just completely over them. I really am. So it's hard for me to drum up enthusiasm. Although the enthusiasm sort of drums up itself when we start talking. We'll have to remember that's true. But two, you all seen all these, haven't you? I mean, truly, this is like, what do we really have to offer at this point, this late in the game, about the first part of the DC European Union stuff? I feel like not a whole lot.
Yep.
But there you go. I'm with you on Wonder Woman. We all pretty much agree that's the Wonder Woman movie we all hoped it would be, and all the choices that they make in it sort of work to that same end. And I really dig that.
And it's, really at that point, we're like, you sort of feel like, okay, yeah, no, this is the direction that these series of movies, these comic book movies, okay, yeah, they're starting to find what they are, what and how they all fit together.
I like that the enemies, the bad guys in this, unlike the over the top, weird, magical, unbeatable bad guy in Suicide Squad, the bad guys in this are really easily beatable. It's war itself that Wonder Woman's fighting against, and the lesson she learns that out here with the rest of us, it's not as easy as thwarting the bad guy that makes war go away, and that even though that is like, yeah, we know that, but that her learning of that is sort of heartbreaking, because we want Wonder Woman to be pure of heart for us, we want her to lead the way. So when she sees that it's a hard moment that I think really, really works. Yeah. And Trevor's sacrifice really works, and just everything about it kind of clicks and is great.
And you're bringing up an interesting point. Whereas Superman is literally a godlike character, and everything like that. The moral center for the DC expanded universe is Wonder Woman.
Yeah, in these set of movies,
the heart,
absolutely.
Yeah, she's the heart and soul of all of these things.
Because she has none of Clark's self-doubt. She has none of his questioning, that stuff is interesting character stuff, but she has none of that. And each time she gets faced with the reality of humanity, it's a slap in the face. Yep.
And she doesn't have any of Bruce's cynicism, Bruce Wayne, so she's really, and she's vital to all of these films.
And yet we're watching this, waiting to see why we've learned in Batman versus Superman that she's hasn't gone home. She walks among us, but she's not been Wonder Woman to us since these events, with a couple of exceptions. Why'd you go away? And this movie in itself doesn't get all the way to that, and the next movie really doesn't, but I'm hopeful we'll find that with this character and with this set of filmmakers, because this movie shows you got it figured out.
Right. All right. So what do you say we end, because the DC extended universe is, we had people saying after Dawn of Justice, we're like, wow, no, well, Snyder's director's cut, we need more, and the air cut, and we need all of these things, and with and does Green Lantern fit into all of this? It has led to some bonkers and some interesting theories and hopes and dreams for people who really do love it. So why don't we do some hot takes, DCEU, the Detective Comics European Union edition.
Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes. Let's get some hot takes.
Let's get some hot takes.
All right. So
fan theories.
Yeah, fan theories. So and in order to do this, I went back in time. I hopped in my my time machine, and I could looked at some articles from around like 2017 and stuff, like after around the time Wonder Woman came out and stuff, to see what people were saying about about these films and where they thought things should go. So let's start with here's a hot take theory that the world engine.
That's the thing that was destroying the world when Zod and Superman were duking it out at the end of Man of Steel.
The Man of Steel world engine. Yep. That is what created Flash and the Cyborg.
Well, there's a Flash movie coming up where we'll learn more. Cyborg, I feel like we know what created him, and it had nothing to do with the world engine. But maybe it did. I mean, maybe there's still some technology connection there. I'm willing to believe that that's possible. Definitely the fallen world engine, the destroyed Kryptonian ship, like I said, the DNA and the blood from the dead Zod character, like all of those have been used by the evil scientists of the day to create all kinds of bad stuff. So I can imagine that maybe Cyborg was part of that, but Cyborg does have his own story. I'm watching the 4-hour version of Justice League tonight because Joel's been bugging me all year, which is to say he bugged me once this year back in February to do a show about this. And now our next show is going to be Justice League. Compare and contrast.
Yeah. I don't know. Justice League versus Justice League.
So I planned that show without having to see the movie, which is interesting, but I feel like we know where Cyborg came from and it's not this, but I like where this person's head's at who made this theory. I mean, that connective tissue is parts of what makes this fun. And I can see how I wouldn't be shocked if we found out something like that.
Yep.
And I think Flash being formed out of Kryptonian technology, I think anyone into a Flash centric sort of storyline wouldn't love that idea. Right?
Yeah, I think that as the theory goes with this is that it's all of the disruption, the atmospheric disruption that the world machine, the world building machine.
But I love Flash.
I love strikes him with the lightning that turns him.
Flash's cameo in Batman versus Superman at the end of the Nightmare, Night with a K.
Yeah,
Batman's Nightmare, and it ends with Flash, moving so fast that he's coming into some sort of timeline, and he gives this very like David Lynchian sort of cryptic comments that he's saying to Batman. And was he really there or wasn't he? Was, because we see the little paper floating down after he's gone when Batman, when Bruce thinks he's woken up for the second time. I love that. I just love that. I'm like, this is what we want, right? We want all these little weird connections, and they can pay off, or even if this doesn't pay off, this drums up interest. It gets me intrigued. I don't need to understand it exactly for it to have meaning here. A lot of people hated it just for that reason, because it doesn't really state its reason for being. It just is a thing. But it's spooky what he's saying. What does he say? Like, I'm too early, right? I'm too early. Like, he figures out that. And it's all about Lois, and it's scary because it spells doom for Lois' character, and it suggests that there's a dark side of Superman that he actually has to be careful of. It's a spooky little thing that's all the last we hear of it, but I really dug that scene. So
let's do
just to get the Flash in there, because that was neat. And
right,
I just love the effects too of it. It's so cool.
Yep. We are here's the theory that comes. It's sort of more out of Suicide Squad, and we get it a little bit in Dawn of Justice. Is that the Joker is not the one who killed Robin? We have that scene where Bruce Wayne is walking through and he sees he has Robin's suit.
Yeah.
That the Joker is not the one to do it. In Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn sort of implies that she did it, that she's more responsible for it. However, there's the theory that the Joker himself is actually Robin, who has gone insane. And will that
I could see that.
Is that where we're going to go?
Going to be tough at this point, but just talking to this theory back in 2018, but it's a really neat idea. And again, the tease of Robin and his fallen, and that something terrible has happened. We know that. I don't know that it matters who's directly responsible. I think if the Joker is in any way responsible, he's responsible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or is that what it is? Is it that Robin became, turned and became the Joker? That's a great idea. Remember that theory going around then, and that's the sort of excitement that those movies were supposed to drum up. And this cool little theory sort of, who cares now? But it's a very neat idea, and I would like to hear that. And I would like to hear that story from Harley's point of view. I think that would be very interesting. So, I dig that. I really like that scene, the little Robin memorial that Bruce has. It's not a scene even. It's just something that bit of traffic that he crosses through to get from one place to another, but it sparks the imagination. It's very cool.
And the last one that we'll just sort of throw out there is a fun one. It is that Aquaman is the one who saved Clark Kent in Man of Steel. There's the scene where Clark Kent saving the people on the oil scene. The oil rig. And
with respect to the one great moment in Superman Returns, which is not a loved film, but the one great moment is him, he's trying to stop a jet that's falling to Earth without just crushing it and destroying it. Like, it's not enough that he's strong enough. Sure, he could stop it, but the movie shows you and demonstrates that he's got to stop it carefully. That is
physics still. Yeah.
Right. That's a task worthy of Superman. And when you're writing a good Superman movie, you really do got to sit down and go, all right, like Seinfeld does, and all those great old Seinfeld movies. You gotta, it's Superman. What are we gonna do? We got to think of ways to thwart Superman. That's really, really hard. That's a way, and that sequence is excellent because of that. And there's a few spread out amongst these films that oil rig sequence before he's even Superman. He's just Clark, as you appropriately said. Did Aquaman save him? No. I mean, does Superman need saving from Aquaman?
Right. Well, it just there. There's a scene with all the whales, the whales coming up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Aquaman sent the whales to just sort of give him the help." Yeah, I guess.
It seems to help, right? But I'm not sure what's happening there. Yeah, maybe Aquaman helps him, but why is Aquaman helping Clark at that point? He certainly doesn't seem happy to see him later.
Yeah, so it makes no sense, except that if Aquaman wasn't saving Clark Kent, he was just saving a guy who was.
It's fun. It's super stupid because
it's so stupid.
It's whales, and not everything has to be something. But two, it's super fun because maybe Aquaman did it. Like that. Whenever you see something in these, if it inspires you to have some sort of idea about it, that is what's exciting about them. And of course,
Jason Momoa states that Zack Snyder told him that is what's happening there. But Zack Snyder has said, "No, I just kind of wanted a cool shot."
Right.
So is it canon?
Sometimes a whale is just a whale.
Sometimes a whale is just a whale.
But I don't know.
That is true. Yeah. It's kind of fun.
I think it's funny that Zach's like, yeah, Jason.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that might be what it is. Hey, I saw him when I was watching Man of Steel, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, Jason, go with that. Roll, do."
You saved Superman. Yeah.
And you know what? You saved Superman before there was Superman.
Without you, there would be no Superman.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool. But I really feel like timeline-wise, there is no Aquaman yet at that point.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
But whatever.
Yeah,
it's fun. I get it. The next film in the series is Justice League. We're gonna try. Well, we'll see. Maybe I won't have a whole show to do about that, but maybe we'll do the next couple too. But I have a feeling Justice League will be more like our traditional deep dives. I think we can even pull out the deep dive fanfare, because I really do think we kind of got to go through it blow by blow. I think we got to talk about the differences both in style and in plot and other things, and talk about just the existence of the culmination of a 4-hour film. Because, you know, Zach was promising in interviews and such before he took himself off the project, and this is just a tease for next week, but he was promising that he was going to deliver a shorter, funner film. And it would seem that he either doesn't know what a short, fun film is, or that he really had no intention of doing that at all at any time, and was just gaming us like he was gaming Jason. We'll talk about it next week. It'll be
that would absolutely fit with who he is as a person. Yeah, he's that kind of guy. All right, so we're going to talk about that next week. Next week will be Justice League. But until then, we sure do thank you for joining us on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.